In this video, I'll be demonstrating seaming a gathered sleeve cap to a shoulder seam. If you're a subscriber, welcome back. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm happy to have you here. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. So in my Happy Flowers pullover sweater pattern, and in many other vintage sweater patterns or other sweater patterns, there could be a gathered sleeve cap that needs to get seamed into the upper sleeve seam, the sleeve head. Sometimes this is accomplished by working decreases at the upper sleeve cap, and then you're simply seaming one width of the sleeve cap into your shoulder seam. Sometimes, though, the sleeve cap is bound off and it is a wider width than what you're seaming into the upper shoulder seam, and you have to work a series of gathers as you are seaming. This is what happens in my Happy Flowers pullover, but you could see it in other sweater patterns as well. So I'd like to demonstrate how I work these types of seams where I need to gather as I'm seaming. So I have here a mock-up of a shoulder seam mimicking the upper sleeve area of the armhole and an upper sleeve cap that's been bound off. There's been some slight shaping happening here, but the width of the sleeve cap, upper sleeve cap, is wider than the area I want to insert this upper sleeve cap into. So I have marked the width, which is equal distance from the shoulder seam on either side. And that's the area that this upper sleeve cap needs to be seamed into. And then I have marked the center of my upper sleeve cap. There are two ways you can gather a sleeve cap like this into your area. You can use pleats, and seam a series of pleats like so, or you can use gathering stitches. I like to use gathering stitches, and that's what I used in my Happy Flowers pullover, but I'll also demonstrate pleats on the one side. Any seaming that happens at a shoulder seam like this should be worked from the center out or the center down. That way you can make sure you're centering that upper sleeve cap right there into the shoulder seam. So for horizontal seaming like this, horizontal to vertical seaming like this, I want to start in the center, coming out of a center of a column of bees. And I'm going to leave half of my seaming thread as a tail so that I have it to work the other edge, and only pull through enough so that I have half my tail to use later. Because I'm gathering this sleeve cap, I don't need to worry about any kind of ratio of stitch gauge to row gauge for picking up stitches along here. So I'm going to pick up every single bar for every single row. And I want to go in one whole selvage stitch. So when working from the center to the left, this is what I'm looking at. And there's my first bar. So I came out of a stitch to the left of the center line. So I'm going to go into a bar to the left of the shoulder seam. What I like to do is catch one leg of multiple stitches. And what I'm going to do is go back down into the center of that stitch to finish that stitch. But then come up and just catch that one leg, that leftmost leg of that stitch. And then I'm going to dive down into the center of the next stitch and catch the left leg, and into the center of the next stitch and catch the left leg. So I'm going to catch 3 stitches at once. If I went under 2 legs, these stitches would start to accordion fold, and I want them to kind of stack on top of one another. So you catch the same leg of each stitch as you move across. So I'll catch 3 legs and then go up to the next bar and catch that 1 bar and pull it snug like so. And then I will move over and catch the left legs of 3 more stitches like so. And then catch the next bar. And then move over a stitch and catch the left leg of 3 more stitches. And move up and catch the next bar. You can do some pre-planning and count your number of stitches and the number of bars you have to work with to figure out how many stitches you need to gather. But I think I'll catch 2 stitches here. And then 2 stitches here. And I pull tightly as I'm working across. And then I will transition to working 1 stitch to 1 bar at the end. So what I want to do is go back into the center of that last stitch. So that left leg got pulled and is twisted a little bit. So I'm going to go down under that so that I can pivot and come up out of the center of the next. There. Back down into the center of that stitch, come up out of the center of the next, catch the next bar, and then down into the center of that selvage stitch and out, like so. So that then is your sleeve gather. And you can play with the puffiness of it. What I like to do then at the end, because there can be some little bit of a gap there, I take my seaming thread and I reinforce that seam by working some back stitching or back and forth under the selvage stitch of both pieces, and I kind of do a weave to just reinforce that seam and prevent any kind of gapping. Provides a little more structure to that seam and stability. like so. And then like so. So that's how I preferred to work my sleeve gather for my Happy Flowers pullover. Instead, you could work a series of tucks or pleats. Let me remove this stitch marker marking the center. So you'll want to kind of pre-plan your pleats. And I dislike this method because it adds bulk. So this is like a gather and evenly distributes the bulk. This is a pleat, so there is some added bulk where it's folded. But it could be another option to give a little bit different look. So I'm going to, you could use some sewing thread to baste these pleats in place. I'm going to use a pin. Okay. So I found my other side of my seaming thread. I need to come up, move over underneath, come up out of the center of the stitch next to that first stitch I used. And find the selvage stitch, first bar, which is right there, and down into the center. Now, what I need to do for these pleats is make sure my bind off edge is lined up with each other. And when I go into the center of this stitch, I want to go through all the layers. So when I go through the center of this stitch, I want to make sure I go through all the layers to the back. And then when I come up out of the center of the stitch next to it, I'm going through all the layers like so. I can remove that pin, and I'm going to catch a couple bars. So with this method, you may need to adjust the number of bars that you are using in your seaming. I'm going to go down into the center of this stitch, which is kind of to the side. I'm going to go through all the layers. Come up out of the center of this one. It's by itself. There's no added thickness yet. I think I'm going to do 2 more bars. Then down into the center. Now I have some double thickness, so I'm going to pinch everything and come up, going through, or trying to go through double layers, come up out of the center there. Catch 2 more bars. Actually, I'm going to just catch 1 bar here. Go down into the center, going through all those layers. Move over, come up out of the center. There, to go through 2 layers. I'm going to kind of pull a little tight here to tighten that up. Tighten that seam up. All right, I'm going to do 1 bar back down into the center, going through both layers. Come up, I think, out of the center of this next stitch. And I have 1 more bar, 1 or 2 more bars, maybe before that marker. Go down into the center of that stitch, and all I have left is the selvage stitch. So I'll come up out of the center of the selvage stitch and catch 1 more bar. Over here, and go down into the center of the selvage. So that is a more secure, needs less reinforcing after the fact. It's more like a traditional seam for a shoulder and gives you a more kind of pleated gather. If you do the pleats, you would want to reverse the direction of the pleats so that on either side of the center line, these pleats move in this direction and the pleats on this side would move in the other direction. Whereas then gathering these stitches gives you more of a gathered sleeve cap. So it all depends on the look you're going for and and whether you're okay with that added bulk there for in those pleats like that. But it's also an attractive option. So that is how I gather my upper sleeve cap to seam it into a shoulder seam. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.